All right. You sent me this link. It says Evergrande. 5 things to know about Evergrande, the Chinese business empire on the brink. Beyond, you just narrating this. What's going on with Evergrande? Why is it relevant to anybody that's listening to this that may not currently understand what it is?
Well, I mean, the TLDR for me is that Evergrande is basically the biggest real estate company and speculative real estate company in China. Now, you may say, well, how does that affect me? Well, let's just break it down. $300 billion in debt. $300 billion in debt. A lot of that debt comes from private investors and banks. Well, guess what? The government comes in and says, hey, listen, you can't take on any more debt. You need to shore it up. Well, they're like, well, hey, we can't finish building our structures right now. We need more debt to continue building it. There's a slowdown because of COVID, affordable housing. You guys as the government are putting a lot of restrictions on us. We can't do that. Well, that's a whole separate fight. But now all the people that they owe money to are like, hey, you owe us a monthly payment. We need our money. And they're like, we don't have the money. And now everybody's like, it's like a run on banks, but a run on the debt here. Everybody wants their money. You got literally old Chinese guys showing up to the headquarters saying, we want our money. And they can't make their payment. So what we're talking about is the largest real estate holding company in China and basically in Asia defaulting. And if they cannot come up with money or they can't get bailed out, this is going to collapse. And if it collapses, we're talking about banks going down. We're talking about private venture capitalists going down. We're talking about people with money going down. We're talking about outside investors going down. We're talking about government shakeups. I mean, the president of China has been talking about a black swan event for a while, and this may be it.
To put that into
a housing crisis.
To put that into context, the $300 billion in liabilities on their balance sheet is equivalent to correct me if I'm wrong. Is that about the GDP of a country like Ireland?
Yeah. So small mid-sized countries, Ireland, depending on the potato harvest that year, Portugal, some of those other small to mid-sized countries. That's a lot of money. I mean, $300 billion sounds like nothing when we're talking about, debt ceilings and U.S. debt. But when you're talking about the size of an actual EU country or a NATO ally, that's a lot of money gone.
Why? So everyone keeps talking about the impacts and what's China going to do. And, there's this idea that global that China owns about 15% of the global debt and that they can call against that. And everyone's concerned that they might. And you say there's safeguards against it, obviously. But beyond that part of it, how does you said that they went from $23 billion in debt in 2019 to $300 billion in debt in 2021. How does that happen? Why are they borrowing so much? Is it pandemic? Obviously, it's probably pandemic related to an extent.
I mean, the government. The funny thing about the government, and not to get into a huge geopolitical conversation, but communist governments operate much differently than democratic or capitalistic governments. So the government wants to have control. So the government is playing a double-edged sword here. So I don't know if the government is going to step in and bail them out or not, because we know that China right now is really going after big companies and big corporations. They're stopping corporations from getting bigger. They're doing antitrust. They're saying they're too big. They're not enough. They want control. They don't like the idea that these companies are getting so big that they actually have influence. The CCP wants to have control. So bringing it back to Evergrande, one of the things is that it's a double-edged sword. The government said, we want to make affordable housing for people. So they encouraged this massive build on giant, vertical apartment buildings that are affordable and they get people into the housing, right? So they basically incentivize this massive explosion in real estate, but then halfway through are like, oh, by the way, we don't want you getting too far in debt, so you need to stop and you need to fix your debt before you go any further. But they're like, it's like a steamroll, like the ball's rolling down the hill. You don't stop that process.
So they bail out now. That's the move.
I don't know. I mean, the government, the China has been very, very, very big in the past of cutting off its own nose to spite its face. I mean, this goes back to before the current government. I mean, look what Mao Zedong did with the Great Leap Forward. It was like, hey, listen, we're gonna stop privatization of land and we're gonna make little communes, right? We're gonna make little communities where everyone works together and is for the people. Everyone's equal. They all work on farming and little, like, their little areas, and they're gonna do all this, and that led to famines, right? It literally killed upwards of 50 million people, and it was like it was we're hurting for the future good, right? Like the government, the party, we know what's best for the people. And I wouldn't be surprised if China lets this fail and then uses it as a continued reason to go after big companies, or just takes over to privatize or takes it to the government anyways.